Okay, so here we are, just a couple of miles away from Fort Necessity. This is the original burial spot for General Braddock. I don't know if that part of the video got cut off or not, but we're actually on a trace of the original road. The road went through here, as you can see behind me. The road clears down there, crosses a stream, and of course goes off into this never-ending hills and valleys and streams that characterize this part of western Pennsylvania. Braddock's body was found. Nobody knew where it was because after he was buried, and George Washington was here, by the way. He was here at the burial of General Braddock. We know that from his memoirs and from other witness testimony. So George Washington would have been here. One of three different places that we know Washington was in this area of the country: Fort Necessity, Braddocks, and of course at Jumonville Glen, which we'll be going to next. After his body was found, after Braddock's body was found, it was moved up to the site that we're going to visit here shortly, where there's a permanent marker. We're not going to the site of Braddock's ambush for this course, and the reason is there's nothing to see there. That area is a suburb of Pittsburgh. There is nothing left of the original battlefield. There's a visitor center there, which is definitely worth going to, and I'd like to someday. But there's really nothing left of the battlefield, so you don't get an appreciation of how wild that country was. Because Braddock actually managed to cross the Monongahela without opposition. He was ambushed shortly after that point and defeated. Braddock actually outnumbered the French by more than 2-1 at that battle. And it was really not an ambush as we consider ambushes. In military terms, we would call that a meeting engagement. Both forces had no idea where the other was. And so when they met, shortly after Braddock crossed the Monongahela, there was no ambush at all. It was a meeting engagement. And Braddock's forces were defeated because they had no ability really to fight in that terrain. All the French forces were primarily Indian allies, Native American allies, and French provincial militia, who were mostly trappers and hunters, and were used to that sort of fighting. They had lived among the Native American tribes. They knew how to fight frontier warfare. Frontier warfare was nasty, brutish, and short. It was very nasty. So here again is the site, and we're going to pan down there a little bit so you can see the kind of terrain that Braddock and his men were crossing over miles and miles from the beginning of the trail to just outside of Duquesne. So right here, we're about 20-odd miles from the site of the battle. And of course, poor Braddock had to be in agony, being carted through this wilderness over bumpy trails, his body riddled with bullets. It's amazing he survived, I believe, 3 or 4 days after the battle with the French. But we're going to head up now, up this trace of Braddocks Road, and we're going to head up to the memorial that was erected to General Braddock.